Thank you so much for joining in. I'm Oscar Blue for Border Network News, correspondent for Real America's Voice News and the Wendy Bell Radio Network. How's everybody doing? Good morning to everybody. Three topics that we are going to talk about today. One, it is the current situation in Guatemala and the country of Guatemala due to this mass migration that is occurring right now. Another thing, what is happening in the south border of Mexico in Tapachula. Again, the problems are continuously flowing into that particular border. Another thing that we're going to talk about, the mayor of New York. All of a sudden, now you know how it feels a little bit. He's complaining about 60,000 migrants, and he is calling a state of emergency, or he's calling it an emergency for the government to understand that do not send them anymore to New York. Ultimately, we're going to be talking about other topics that have to do with this enormous trafficking business and the things that are happening in Central and South America. But first, sadly, this is what is happening due to the Biden administration. And I don't want to blame the whole Biden administration, but for God's sake, if you have an open border policy and if you're continuing with this, that is continuous ideologies of open borders and incentivization for people to come from all across the world that I will show you right now, statistics given out by the government of Guatemala, the country of Guatemala, it is the one that is right now in the epicenter of this trampling to get to Mexico, and ultimately from Mexico, the migrants, move up north into the borders of the United States of America. But the government of Guatemala is trying to do something, and nobody's talking about also the so-called humanitarian administration of Joseph Biden, that they're saying we are not deporting people, we are admitting all. When the curious thing about the Guatemala migrants is that he's deporting all Guatemala family units, but he's not deporting military-age men. That is something that is really curious about this current administration, that they're admitting more military-age men, but they're not deporting, but they are deporting family units. It's it has an agenda possibly, or it has a purpose. We don't know what purpose it is. As you guys have seen that I have traveled with multiple caravans, more than 10 caravans I have walked, and you guys have seen that the majority of them, and the vast majority of them, are men. Military-age men. A lot of them, they were in the military. A lot of them, they were in the police forces. A lot of them, they're running away from persecution. A lot of them, they're running away from this, dictator, Nicolas Maduro. But the majority of them are military-age men. Go into what right now, and you will see on the screen right here, what is happening in the south border of Tapachula. This right here, it was posted by FN Noticias, that our colleague Juan Manuel Blanco practically writes for FN Noticias in the parts of Tapachula. And it says that this immigration center that I have been through and that I have been at in the past, that is called 21st Century, Siglo XXI, it has been overwhelmed. This is what we have been talking about for the past months, that all the shelters in the north borders that connect to the United States of America on the Mexican territory, they are overwhelmed. They're overpacked. There's no space. There's actually migrants waiting outside of the shelter to wait for a space so they can camp in or they can sleep in. But in particular, this migrant station, Siglo XXI, that has capacity for 960 people. And right now, it has an overwhelming 2,000 and plus capacity right now. Imagine how that feels. That is more than double the quantity of this shelter or this detention center that is considered the prison of migrants in the south border of Tapachula. And it's now overwhelming more than 2,000. And it has, entities by Venezuela, majority of Venezuelan people, Colombia, the Republican Dominican, Nicaragua, and Haiti, and other countries from Africa. A lot of countries from Africa and a lot of people from Africa have been arriving consistently into the south border of Mexico. And the things about this is that the Guatemala government right now, it has a lot of problems. And this is because if you have a country that is the prize of all, that is the United States of America, and they're saying, we want you, we want to admit you, we want to have you right now, come into our country. That is what the Biden administration is particularly saying to the world. Well, the migrants, when they arrive to every Central and South American country, they're asking, why are you not letting us pass? We don't have to respect, every process. The United States wants us. We don't want to be in your country. We want to go to the United States. So every country that is on the way, or it's blocking to be on the way to the United States of America, they're being held accountable, and they're at fault for what they're not respecting the immigration law or the processes. And ultimately, it is the fault of the one that has incentivized this open border policy. If you go to two borders in the Guatemala country, that there's the one that they're suffering the most right now, it is the Institute National Immigration of Guatemala released a statistic that it will see right here on the screen. And a statistic that is clearly, it tells you how crazy these mass deportations or expulsions. Look, I'm not putting words, and I'm not creating fear monger, and I'm not creating hysteria like these leftists say, or I'm not being a conspiranoic like these leftists say. This is the words that the Institute National Immigration of Guatemala are releasing. They're saying that people that they have been expelled from this September to October to the date right now on the port of entry from Guatemala to Honduras that is called Cinchado, 365 Venezuelans have been deported. And look at the men, 238 men. Minors, 11 minors women, and 7 minors men. 11 minors men, 7 minors women. But you go down as the entities, 180 Cuban, 59 Haitian, 20 from Peru, and you go from all the entities. Look at the entities. It goes Venezuelan, Honduras, Cubans, Haitians, Peru, Nicaragua, Ecuador, Colombia, Somalia, Angola, Brazil, Chile, Guinea-Bissau, and Senegal. And the total of this port of exit, they have returned back or expelled 670. But you go to the other port of entry that is crazy, as you guys going to see this on the image right here. On the port of entry of Aguacaliente, entering from Honduras to Guatemala, look at all the entities. This is how crazy it is. And you got 3,057 men or women or families that they have been expelled and returned back from the Guatemala government from Venezuela. 357. You got 177 from Ecuador, and it goes down. But look at the entities. I will read you the entities. Venezuela, Ecuador, I'm going by numbers. Venezuela, Ecuador, Cuba, Haiti, Colombia, Republican Dominican, Honduras, Nicaragua, from Afghanistan, Peru, that's 10, Chile, Singales, Senegal, Panama, Burkinese, Brazil, Cameroon, Somalia, Costa Rica, Uzbekistan, that's 20, Gambia, China, Nigeria, Hindu, Ethiopia, Guinea, Belize, Bolivians, Uruguay, and Argentina. That's almost 30 countries entering from this particular port of entry. So a lot of U.S. citizens are saying, why the Central American countries are not doing anything about it to stop this? They're not supposed to be doing the dirty work for a Biden administration that has an open border policy. They're not supposed to be doing that, but they're actually doing it without no collaboration from the Biden administration. That is crazy. Without no collaboration from these open border policies. Without no collaboration by no government from the United States of America. As a matter of fact, it is the complete opposite. The Biden administration is continuing to say, Jean-Pierre is continuing to stand in the middle of all and say, there's nothing going on. Everything is okay. Everything is fine. The border is secure. Nothing is happening over there. I have visited the border back in the 18th century. Also, Kamala Harris, the border czar, saying everything is okay. Nothing is happening. The border is secure. You go to the president of the United States of America, that is Joseph Biden, and you ask him about it, and he completely is in denial. He doesn't even know what to respond. And don't even talk about Alejandro Mayorkas. For God's sake, the man is where is he? Missing in action, MIA. Where is he? He hasn't declared nothing. He hasn't said anything. And all these open border policies, what they're causing, and I have been emphatic completely emphatic on this, is that they are creating more animosity between governments and migrants. The criminalization of immigration is creating that the organized crime and the cartels, they take advantage of the vulnerabilities and also infiltrated individuals, that they are in the middle of all of this, that they are arriving unfiltered to every country. Every country needs a filter. They need a process for immigration. If you don't have a process for immigration, then you would not be a sovereign nation. And that is what is actually happening right here. Because of the incentivization of the North, the central part of the continent and the south part of the continent, with other parts of other continents, they are arriving to the West and entering and potentially saying, you know what, the United States wants us. Why we should be waiting here? Why we have to wait continuously here when the United States is the one that is asking for us to go? Now, this has been reports from the Guatemala government, and I'm focusing on Guatemala because Guatemala has been having a lot of problems. 3 coyotes were stopped. 3 leaders of these organized groups that they were massively operating in the borders of Guatemala. And according to the Guatemala government, they stopped 3 of them and they captured 3 of them in this particular part, according to the civil police. One of them, his name was José Luis Alemán Suárez. The other one was Alex Noé Picado Gutiérrez. And the other one was Moisés Adán Dávila Hernández. And they have been reinforcing, according, as you are seeing on the screen, I'm putting the informative, the bulletin, the information of the Institute of National Immigration of Guatemala. They're informing that they have been reinforcing the borders of Agua Caliente. Agua Caliente, it is a port of entry that is next to Esquipulas, Chiquimula, next to Honduras. These are ports of entry that they're continuously massive flows, as these travel advisors, they're operating from Central and South America now to North America. It is crazy how I have said this before, and I will say it again. For people that don't understand this, I have been saying this for years. The continent of America is under globalist communist attack. And if you see how the continent of America, it is played out now by leftist governments, you will understand why I was saying this. Canada leftist, United States leftist, Mexico leftist, Guatemala leftist, Nicaragua leftist, Honduras leftist, Peru leftist, Venezuela leftist, Colombia leftist, Ecuador, it is left. Colombia now left. Brazil is left. Bolivia is left. In Chile is left. You are now seeing how the leftist governments are under this globalistic ideology of open borders. It is something that is coming to our minds that we have never seen before. And the first one that brought the global compact on migration to the West was Barack Obama. He brought it on 2015. So we're going on 7 years of this, and it hasn't been regulated, and it hasn't been filtered. The only thing that the United States has done is try to protect the United States with a wall and try to stop that with policies like Stay in Mexico policy and also the Title 42. Other than that, the other countries in Central and South America, they haven't done anything. Because there are, if you get to see Canada with Trudeau, they hasn't done anything, and they're not going to do anything. Now, Joe Biden has brought back the United States of America into the global compact on migration, which tells you that every country from the north of the continent all the way to the south, they're aligned with the United Nations. And it is crazy how we are seeing these policies passing by the citizens and, and so-called Soros called as a humanitarian, for God's sake. Now, the pander that this administration of the United States is using, the language that they use, it is so important that we care to discuss. As they use fear-monger, creating hysteria at the border, conspiranoid, conspiracy theories, white supremacists, white imperialists, xenophobic, homophobic, transphobic, pronoun-phobic, racist, fascist, everything that has to do with, being oppressed, being a victim. Why they don't talk about what they're doing to the migrants of Guatemala? And the migrants of Guatemala are migrating to the United States to see if they can have a legitimate case of asylum or an opportunity. But the Biden administration, it is returning back and deporting to Guatemala a lot of family units, but they're admitting a lot of military-age men. That is something really curious. And if you get to see this statement that I will put on the screen, the Guatemala government has informed that they're suspending right now flights of deportations and returnees from the United States to the capital of Guatemala due to the fact of the phenomenon, of natural phenomenon that is called Julia. But as you see on the screen right here, and I will read it to you, it says that from January till now, 401 flights have been operating from the United States over here, which means that they have been deporting 45,489 people from Guatemala. A lot of the flights have stopped in Mexico, and from Mexico they have deported them to Guatemala. Out of those flights that they have stopped in Mexico, 12,074 have been deported from Mexico to Guatemala, but the majority of them have been 33,415 from the United States to Guatemala. Nobody's talking about how inhuman this administration is. Nobody. How, because of this open border policies, a lot of migrants sadly are dying in the Darien Gap, sadly are being kidnapped in Mexico, sadly they are dying and they're risking their lives, and they have lost their children in the desert, in the seas, in the jungles, in the mountains, in the Rio Grande River. Nobody's talking about that. And why they're hiding that? Because there's election time. Come on, people. Election time. Do not mention it. Do not talk about it. You got to keep quiet. Yes, we have visited the border. Yes, we're doing this. Yes, we're doing that. Shh, keep quiet. Do not talk about it. When we have a humongous problem that is causing problems because of this open border policies on the north, it is causing problems in other governments that are trying to do something. How are you going to try to stop, or how are you going to try, and forget the word stop, because migration, for me, in my perception, migration is a right, but in those rights, there's laws, and you have to obey the law, and you have to obey the immigration law. But ultimately, how these governments are going to do something if the number one provider and the number one incentivizer, it is telling them to come in irregular fashion, and all these other countries, they don't have another other option but to say, go ahead. And who's going to fund this? How are you going to receive this support? And this is why United States citizens are saying, well, we have been funding and giving out money to Mexico, Guatemala, and Central America. Why do you think so? Because the problem provokes from the incentivization of open borders. And the other countries are saying, well, you're the one that is saying that it's open. We need support from you. Because how are we going to sustain this? With our own funds? Oh, you should close your border and go to war. Why we should be doing your dirty work? Isn't it? We should be working together as a team. We should be regulating this migration. We should be helping the legitimate cases of asylum. We should be controlling the migration. We should be putting a filter in the migration so these infiltrated individuals and these organized groups would not be operating and taking advantage of the most vulnerable people. Isn't that what we should be doing? But the Biden administration is doing the complete opposite. And not only the Biden administration, stop, the blaming on Biden. These leftist organizations, they're doing the complete opposite. We have trouble with it. Don't come to me with your failed statements of these pseudo-journalists, these wannabe journalists, desk journalists, that they're saying, oh, I travel with migrants in the desert and I have seen them. You have never seen squat. You stand at a podium, you receive a prize that it was given to you because you pander to what they want to listen. But you haven't seen squat. You haven't traveled and you haven't walked and you haven't sweat with them. You haven't passed hunger with them. You haven't sleep with them in the grass, in the streets. That is the cruel reality of what they go through. You don't see the United Nations in the mountains and the seas and the deserts. You see them when they are funneling people. Oh, go ahead. You can go and go and go. Travel with the most dangerous. Keep paying the travel advisor, the coyote. As you know, now a coyote and a trafficker has become a resource. Sadly, it has become a resource. Lastly, I want to mention a topic real quick. As the president of El Salvador, for me, he's the best president in the whole continent. He's the best president in the whole continent. A lot of people call him inhuman. because of what he has been doing, that he's been locking up MS gang members. A lot of them, they have been calling him that he is out of line for his relentless operation to stop this gang of mafia from operating and taking advantage of their own people. But have you guys seen something? No caravans have come out of El Salvador. Did you guys saw this list that I just put on the screen about people migrating from old entities? And I almost mentioned you 30 countries. There was not even one from El Salvador. Why do you think? The president is making a change. Nayib Bukele has said strongly, my people should not be migrating. My talent should not be migrating to other countries. I want to keep my talent and I want to offer them the best that I can to make my country great. And one of the things that he did yesterday, he set up a prayer. They're going through a horrible, natural disaster. And this is one of the things that actually leadership, to bring God values, family values to a country, it is all about. Those are the fundamentals of a country. To continue and to basically make your country great. So today I want to read you something from this book that I always read. That is A Prayer, Spiritual Warfare by Charles Spurgeon. And it's a part right here that it says, believers receive the salvation of their souls as the culmination of their faith. They receive salvation by faith so that they may also receive it by grace. We are saved by faith and hope. Therefore, we rejoice right now in the salvation that we have already obtained and that we already enjoy by the faith in Christ Jesus. Yet, we are conscious that there is something more than this to be obtained. We will receive the salvation in a larger sense that we do not yet see. For that present moment, we find ourselves living inside temporary tabernacles. For we that are in the tabernacle do groan, being burned. 2 Corinthians 5:4. And all around us, creation is clearly experiencing labor pains. We can see signs of the earth, contractions, and the unrest, upheaval, and anguish occurring in nature. Read this book. It's great. Charles Spurgeon. Thank you so much for joining in. I'm Oscar Blue for Border Network News, correspondent for Real America's Voice News and the Wendy Bell Radio Network. You can follow my partner, Real Anthony Alwedo. You can follow him at all platforms and Border Network News. Also follow our colleague and brother and friend, Ben Berquam in Frontline America. Also download the app, Real America's Voice News. Go to the App Store. Download the app. It is free. Real America's Voice News, the voice of the people. You can watch us at Roku, at DirecTV, at all places. Also download the app, Wendy Bell Radio Network. It is free. Go over there. Watch one of the most talented, if it's not the most talented woman to give the news from the United States of America, Ms. Wendy Bell, with Mr. Brock and the Wendy Bell Radio Network. And I am proud to be a correspondent for them also. Thank you so much. You can follow me at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Getter, Instagram as Oscar Blue Ramirez. Also at Rumble as Oscar L. Blue. God bless you all. Stay safe. And like we always say, people, peace and love. Because always, your country's first. God bless.